two main reasons. The first is purely functional. Probably the most practical aspect of the US-China relationship right now is the ability of US and Chinese companies to work together subnationally. So sort of keeping out the central government and doing deals based on the needs of individual regions and individual companies. I think that's a key part of why the US-China relationship is sort of in a functional state at the moment. Secondly, I think there are clearly, from what Mark New was just saying, some very, very serious, sensitive issues that need to be discussed and maintained between the US-China on technology companies in particular. And so this is an opportunity, I think, for President Xi to sort of get ahead of this issue before he comes to Washington, to demonstrate some willingness to engage, but also to create a platform for future cooperation on some pretty tricky issues to do with cyber espionage, to do with where servers are being placed and how US companies comply with Chinese laws about getting information about individuals. All of those kind of things, some of those issues still need to be thrashed out.
Indeed. Let's focus on those in a bit more detail. Industrial and commercial espionage, hacking, these are key concerns on the American side. What should we expect to hear specifically from the Seattle Chamber of Commerce and later on in Washington?
Well, I think I've actually had discussions with the Shanghai, US Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, and they personally don't see this as being their main issue. They are more focused on how US companies can tap into the growing prominence of China's middle class. I think they would prefer the cyber companies themselves and the US government to do the work on these sensitive issues and maintain their business interests as best they can in a functional manner. But in terms of the US government, I think there is a pressure on the Obama administration at the moment to take a firmer stance on cyber espionage, particularly to do with the intellectual property that people can gain from being effective at cyber espionage. And there is the possibility that some individuals in China may be subject to sanctions in the future. A lot of pressure on the Obama administration to take such measures to send a signal to Beijing that, the business as usual is unacceptable. But clearly the Obama administration also has to be sensitive to the needs of China's political needs, as this is a state visit. So the extent to which we will see great strides of progress remains to be seen. But certainly I think both leaders are going to have to address this and create a platform, a pathway forward, which involves a lot more dialogue in order to thrash out some of these issues.
Indeed. One last question for you, Daniel. Quite a few questions about China's response to the meltdown in its equity market have come up repeatedly, time and again in the US circles. Will China's monetary policy come up, especially in talks in Washington?
I think what the conversation is currently about is not just about China's currency, but about how this impacts the entire global economy and how central banks are impacted. So, for example, in China, yes, there has been a devaluation of the yuan, but at the same time, some other Asian economies have also been taking monetary policy steps to lower the value of their own currencies, at the same time as the US Federal Reserve is considering raising interest rates. So it presents a problem for US exporters going forward in terms of their competitiveness. So I think this is not just about China, but it's about the potential for there to be a race to the bottom in terms of devaluation. At the same time, other people say this is not an issue. If an economy, if a central bank needs to make monetary policy steps, it simply has to do that, and that's based on rational economic things. So there is a debate here, but certainly I think this issue will come up. The extent to which Washington is going to push on Beijing on this particular issue remains to be seen.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being, looking forward to what's coming out of Washington and also in the United States over the next couple of days. That, of course, was Daniel Renges live in Washington.